Imagine the scene: a day that should be celebrated, full of laughter and hugs, becomes a battlefield where love is put to the test. This is exactly what happened to Lydia on her 28th birthday, when an unexpected visit changed everything. And not any visit, but the one that carries with it the weight of years of tension, expectations, and a possessive love capable of suffocating even the strongest. Dear listeners, here is Andre Branco, and today on the Entrelated Almas we can dive into a story that will make you rethink the limits of respect, love, and family. Get ready for a narrative that will mess with your emotions and, perhaps, make you look with other eyes to the conflicts we often ignore. Ksenia Mikhailovna was not an ordinary woman. At 58, she saw herself as a strategist of life, convinced that men, especially her son Igor at the age of 32, were eternal lost boys, unable to make decisions without a mother's firm guidance. For her, Igor's marriage to Lydia was a mistake from the beginning. After all, what independent woman, with a promising career in a multinational, a salary that many would envy, and an apartment inherited from her grandmother, could her son worthy? Ksenia saw in Lydia not a daughter-in-law, but a rival. Someone who disputed not only Igor's affection but also control over him. The first 2 years of marriage were a succession of small wars. Ksenia appeared without warning, criticized the seasoning of Lydia's dishes, questioned her home choices and, above all, did not hide discontent because she still had no grandchildren to display as a trophy. Igor, while trying to mediate conflicts, always ended up giving in to maternal pressure. After all, who could challenge decades of an education that conditioned him to obey? Lydia, in turn, swallows dry. She loved her husband deeply and knew that an open confrontation with her mother-in-law could destroy the little peace that was still left in her home. Then she smiled, listened to the unquieted advice, and kept her frustration to her every day. But even the best-trained patience has a limit. And this limit was surpassed when Ksenia, after an epic fight with the neighbor of his former republic involving curses, threats and an absurd dispute in the bathroom, decided it was time for a radical change. If I can't live in peace there, I'll live here, he thought. And what best time to execute your plan than just on Nora's birthday? A gift that surely Lydia would never forget. On the morning of April 27th, Lydia woke up with a light heart. The day promised to be perfect: an intimate dinner with Igor, flowers on the table, a loving note left by her husband before leaving for work. She even wondered what the night would look like, just the two, celebrating another year of life together. The guests would only arrive at 6, so there was plenty of time to prepare everything. He made his nails, chose the dress, planned the menu. Everything seemed in harmony, until, at 4 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. When peering through the magical eye, Lydia felt a chill. Ksenia was outside, with 2 giant bags and a smile that looked more like a storm warning. It can't be, he thought. But it was. When opening the door, even before he could pronounce a good morning, the mother-in-law announced, with the naturalness of those who command an army, "I got to stay. You, my dear, can pack your things and go back to Mom. This house is now mine, and my son, of course." Lydia was paralyzed. Ksenia didn't wait for an invitation. He entered the owner of the place, threw the bag on the couch and began to inspect each corner with the look of those who already consider himself in the right to judge. "What are you talking about?" Lydia managed to babble, while a wave of indignation climbed through her throat. "I'm saying that Igor is my son, and his place is by my side, not side of a strange," said Ksenia, untying the scarf with the tranquility of those who have just conquered a territory. "This is my house," Lydia tried to argue, holding her voice so as not to scream. "Igor is my husband. We live here together." Ksenia laughed, a dry, disdainable sound. "Prove. Show me the documents that prove that this apartment is yours alone. Or are you hiding something?" Lydia felt the floor shake. Yes, scripture was in his name, her grandmother's inheritance, but she wouldn't demean to justify her life to that woman. "I don't need to prove anything. This is my home, and I don't go anywhere." It was then that Ksenia took the next step. Without further ado, he headed for his room and began to empty Lydia's cabinets, throwing his clothes to the floor like garbage. "What do you think you are doing?" Lydia exploded, running after her. "I'm helping you pack," Ksenia replied, without even looking at her in her eyes. The sooner you leave, the better for everyone. Igor is already an adult, needs to choose your priorities. Lydia tried to hold her arm, but Ksenia released with a sudden movement. Don't touch me, I'm his mother, I have more rights here than you. The two were face to face, breathing heavy. Lydia was higher, stronger, but something inside her prevented her from using strength against an older woman, no matter how unfair. Then she took the cell phone. I'll call Igor. Call, said Ksenia, with a triumphant glow in her eyes. Let's see who he will choose, the mother who raised him or the wife who is driving him away. Lydia's hands trembled as she dials. Igor answered after a few touches, clearly in the middle of a meeting. At first he did not believe what he heard. Mom, what's going on? He asked incredulously. She's throwing my things away, Igor. Your mother came here with her bags and said she'll live with us, that I have to leave. There was a silence on the other side of the line. Then a heavy sigh. I'm already going. When Igor arrived, he found a war scenario. Ksenia, who minutes earlier she acted as a relentless general, became a fragile and hurt mother. Son, I couldn't stand living in that hell anymore. Your wife has plenty of space here, won't make a difference. Igor, red with anger and shame, tried to be firm. Mom, this apartment is from Lydia. We can't just invade her house. Ksenia crossed her arms. So is that? Do you choose her? The silence that followed was sharp. Lydia watched the scene, feeling something break inside him. 3 years of tolerance, forced smiles, swallowing offenses, and now that woman tried to steal not only her home but her husband. Ksenia, she said, with a calm that surprised her. I understand that you are his mother. But before she could continue, the mother-in-law interrupted her, lifting her voice like a sword, and you will never be. It was the drop of water. Lydia looked at Igor, who seemed lost between two women who loved him in such different ways. And then she knew what she had to do. Not out of hatred, not for revenge, but out of respect for herself. Because some battles are not to be won. They are to be closed. It was not against Igor that Lydia spoke, it was for his home, for his space, for the dignity that had stolen his drop, sneakily, as if the right to own his own home were a privilege to be negotiated. And no, she would not ask for permission. No more. Something inside her snapped. Years of contained frustration, silently swallowed humiliation, forced smiles while the mother-in-law trampled her boundaries as if they were welcome rugs, it all gushed at once, an impossible flood to contain. Lydia advanced until he was so close to Ksenia Mikhailovna that she could see every wrinkle of disdain on her face, every shadow of superiority in her light eyes. He looked at her fixed, without blinking, and when? His voice was cold, but firm as seasoned steel. You know very well that you live comfortable here. Too much, in fact. But if you want to continue, you will follow my rules. An ironic smile bowed his lips. Don't cheer up. It is not a negotiation. Ksenia Mikhailovna arched her eyebrows, convinced that she had already won. Vot I doggerorally. See, we reached an agreement. As if Lydia were one of the women who bowed to their whims. As if that house were a territory conquered, not a home that she, Lydia, had built with sweat and love. Not so fast, he cut off, turning to the door with the elegance of those who have already decided the outcome. First, you will pay 1/3 of the bills. He opened the door with a theatrical gesture, as if he invited his mother-in-law to admire the view. Second, each one cleans the mess itself. Third, and here his voice lowered, loaded with a warning that left no replica room dash, not a word about how I administered my home. Before Ksenia Mikhailovna could react, Lydia was already dragging her bags to the corridor. The neighbors, alerted by the noise, began to peek at the cracks of the doors, but she didn't care. To watch. To learn. What are you doing? He shouted his mother-in-law, the red face of indignation. Lydia didn't even look back. I teach you to ask. He pushed the last suitcase out and turned, crossing his arms. If you want to stay, ask for politely. And give me a good reason to endure your presence here. Ksenia Mikhailovna panted, as if he had been slapped. Igor. He shouted, appealing to his son, who remained paralyzed in the middle of the room, a conflict map. Will you allow her to talk to me like that? Lydia did not give him time to answer. His eyes found those of Igor, and in them there was a challenge that did not admit half words. Your choice, Igor. Or your mother learns to respect our home, our family. He paused deliberately, or she packed her bags for good. Silence. Ksenia Mikhailovna swallowed. For the first time in years, there were no allies, there were no assets. Only one ajar door and the cold of the corridor. Witness changes his defeat. Mom. He murmured, the shaking voice of calculated fragility. Maybe we should talk. Lydia did not give in. Not now. Not after all. Speak your hand on the doorknob, he said, indicating the exit with a dry gesture. The mother-in-law hesitated. The eyes shone with crocodile tears, but Lydia knew that game well. Waited. A second. 2. Until, finally, Ksenia Mikhailovna crossed the threshold, dragging her feet like a deposed queen. The door closed with a definitive click. Outside, the sobs began, tall, theatrical, made to be heard. Ingle. Cruel. A heartless daughter-in-law. The words echoed through the corridor, mixed with the murmur of the neighbors, who now watched the show with a mixture of fun and pity. Igor sank on the couch, his hands on his hair. Lyuda. Your voice broke. It's my mother. How can you? How can I? Lydia approached, knelt before him and held her face in her hands. She created you, Igor. But I love you. And love is not letting them destroy what we built together. He closed his eyes, as if the truth gave. I didn't want to hurt her. And I don't want her to hurt us anymore. The sobs out there were getting weaker. Ksenia Mikhailovna had realized that her audience had lost interest. Half an hour later, a shy touch on the door. Lidochka. The voice was sweet, almost childish. Can I come in? I need to use the bathroom. Lydia opened the door, but did not move. First, apologize. In truth. The mother-in-law's teeth tightened. For a moment Lydia thought she would rather pee in the corridor to give in. But the need, or perhaps the humiliation of being seen there, sitting on his own bags, he said louder. Sorry. Dumb lead, the words coming out like poison. I exalted myself. Why? Ksenia Mikhailovna faced her, furiously. For trying to expel you. And for throwing your things away. Better. Lydia walked away, allowing her to pass. Now come in. But no, this is not an invitation to stay. It is a truce. When the mother-in-law left the bathroom, Lydia was already sitting at the table, with a makeshift contract at the front, clear rules, deadlines, consequences. You can spend a month, he said, sliding the paper toward her, while solving your life. But as a guest, not as a owner. And if you move what is mine, criticize yourself like me alive, if you try to manipulate Igor, paused, letting the threat to hang you come out at the same time. Ksenia Mikhailovna looked at the paper, then to her daughter-in-law. For the first time, there was no hatred in his eyes. There was something worse, the recognition that he had lost. A month, he repeated, as if testing the weight of the word. A month, Lydia confirmed. And not one more day. Igor sighed relieved when his mother finally signed. The conflict was over. At least for now. But both knew, that was not a surrender. It was an armistice. And in the next battle, Lydia would be even more prepared.